Ladies and gentlemen, it's the moment you've been waiting for. Peak IDV Live is starting now. I'm pleased to introduce your host, Steve Craig, founder and Chief Enablement Officer of Peak IDV. Take it away, Steve.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Peak IDV Live. This time, Peak IDV presents the Deepfakes and Synthetic Identity 3-beam live stream with the Prism Project, and I'm super excited about today's programming. Let's kick right off by introducing our host with the most here, Maxine Most. Welcome, Maxine.
Oh no, the hostess with the mostest. It's followed me around my whole life.
Oh no, sorry about that. We'll just leave that one to the side. How are you today?
Well, Steve, I'm really glad to be here, especially because my voice is actually working. I had lost my voice yesterday and basically was whispering. So I have been stocking up on the soup and the lemon juice and hot lemon juice and tea. And so I apologize for the quality of my voice, but at least I can speak and be heard. So I'm excited about that.
It's not the normal what in the world of identity voice, but I think it'll work just great for today's stream. Now, there are some housekeeping items I want to get to really quickly, and then I'd love it if you could share Prism context. So let me just set the stage here. First up, for this event, we have a stream partner. The stream partner is going to be the official replay of this event. They're going to broadcast it actually more during European hours. So let me roll that promo for our stream partner.
Today's Deepfakes and Synthetic Identity 3-beam livestream is supported by our stream partner, KYC Guide, the leading intelligence hub for KYC technology buying and compliance journalism. Learn more about our stream partner by going to kycaml.guide or scan the QR code on your screen. Now, handing it back to Maxine and Steve.
Be sure to check out KYC AML Guide. Let's briefly touch on the panel rules. If you saw the Is DocFeed Dead live stream, it's going to be very similar. First of all, the audience is invited to participate in the comments. So this is a LinkedIn Live. So as you hear things, see things, be sure to put your thoughts into those comments and we'll try our best to interact with those. This is going to be set up in 6 rounds. There's a 30-second intro that each of the panelists will provide. Then we're going to have for each question a 2-minute opener. This is a longer opener for that person to respond to the question and set the stage. Then the other panelists, they can respond to the opener. They can come up with their own response. They'll have 90 seconds to do so. And then after each of the panelists have gone through a round, Maxine's going to choose one of the panelists for a follow-up question. We don't know what the follow-up questions will be, and she's going to have those on the fly. So it should be very, very exciting. So let's get into the context, Maxine. If you can, we want to share why we're doing these 3-beam live streams and how they fit into the broader digital identity ecosystem.
Why are we here? So we are here because of the Prism Project and our Prism Identity Landscape. This is the latest one that's coming up for our Deepfake and Synthetic Identity Report, which is why we have our amazing 3 sponsors here today joining us on this 3-beam live stream. And the whole idea is to be looking at this critical issue in digital identity, which is deepfakes and synthetic identity, which is everywhere. Every time you look at a newspaper, every time you listen to a news report. I mean, this is just the constant drumbeat of the fear around deepfake and synthetic identity generated fraud and identity theft. And so with the Prism, of course, what we're doing is trying to look across the ecosystem to look at the different types of players and how they contribute to developing solutions that can be used across public and private sector enterprises. And again, the idea behind this 3-beam live stream is to bring players together from 3 different beams and talk a little bit about what their different perspectives are in terms of how they see these problems and how they develop solutions. And then hopefully talk as well a little bit about why all the different players across the ecosystem have a role to play and how those come together when end users are trying to sort out how to detect and defend against these kind of attacks. And These, for those of you who have been following along with the Prism and the Deepfakes and Synthetic Identity report, we've been doing a lot of promos and previews. These are the sponsors that are participating. You can see we have folks from across the ecosystem, which is great because it provides a lot of perspective. And then today we have 3 fantastic sponsors that are our panelists for this live stream. So we're really excited to have them here and looking forward to having a little lively confrontation, a little different perspectives, and perhaps a little kumbaya even about how these kind of organizations can ultimately work together to solve problems across the industry. Because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what this is about, is delivering solutions for folks across different vertical industries so that they can provide secure, reliable services to their customers.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maxine, for that context. I think we're ready to get into introductions.
All right, here we go.
So let's start with the first one, Priya Lafi of DuckDuckGoose. To get you ready, we're going to do a 30-second shot clock. So please introduce yourself, your company, in the context of the Prism, if you can.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in this webinar today with all of you. My name is Priya, and I'm one of the co-founders of DuckDuckGoose, as introduced by Steve. And DuckDuckGoose is all about making sure that we have a digital environment where we still can believe what we perceive. And to that end, we make generalizable but also explainable AI technologies to uncover deepfakes and synthetic media. And these tools can be integrated into any existing solution, any existing flow, without having to replace or interrupt anything at the flow, and also without having the end users to do anything extra in terms of frictionless, to make sure that we can still believe what we perceive and see.
Excellent. Thank you, Priya. Watch the shot clock. 30 seconds.
We're going to take a big hook and pull you off. We're going to have our deep-faked hook that removes...
The shot clock has been showing.
Yeah, well, let's get into our next one. It's Mr. Blair Cohen of AuthenticID. Blair, you have 30 seconds to set the context.
I can't see the shot clock, so hopefully it won't go over. Give me the hook, Maxine. So Blair Cohen, I'm the founder, president here at AuthenticID. And where AuthenticID fits into this Beam and Prism report is we focus on forensically analyzing government-issued identity documents and making sure that the person that's offering that document is the person depicted on the headshot of the identity document, and that they're alive and not a deep fake. They're really alive and naturally captured in the moment. Done.
Done. Thank you. Thank you. And our third panelist, Tobin Broadfoot of Keyless. Tobin, you're up. Hopefully you can see the clock, and let's go.
I can see the clock. You took 3 of my seconds, though.
All right, we'll give them back.
You can run over.
Claiming your time.
I'm the product director at Keyless. We provide 100% privacy preserving facial biometric authentication. You had us in the passwordless authentication category, Maxine. I think that works really well. It's secure, it's 100% privacy preserving, as I said, and it's super easy for customers to use and users to use. So 300 milliseconds for double factor authentication in a single glance. That's it.
Wonderful. Well, here we are. We have our group, and we'll be a little bit liberal with the shot clock because sometimes it does jump, and then I'm saying things and Maxine is saying things. So we just want to keep the timing and the pacing. But this is our all-star panel. Maxine, would you like to kick us off with the first question?
Yeah, and this is for Priya. If, as you said, if seeing is no longer believing, or you want to focus on perceiving is believing, can society really rely on digital identity, or are we approaching a digital trust apocalypse?
I think the rise of deepfakes has definitely shaken confidence in digital media and also digital identities. And in fact, that the reason behind that is when anyone basically can create a hyper-realistic fake video or fake picture of someone else, it feels like digital apocalypse indeed, as we said, or apocalypse, excuse me. And in that sense, it's indeed really, I think, for also the users out there, but also institutions using this type of technologies to be able to make sure whom they are dealing with. It definitely feels like there is indeed something going on. I was having a conversation with my co-founder lately, and he asked me this question, which was really also mind-blowing and thought-provoking to myself even. he was like, Maria, we present our faces nowadays everywhere, like in this webinar or on social media, in news articles. And in that sense, since everyone can just, get this picture out of us and make a deep fake, do you then think that the face that you have in that sense only belongs to you? And I was like, wow, this is indeed the mindset that we should have, because I really believe that there is indeed a need for having different approaches. So there is indeed deepfake going on. We have generative AI coming up, but also, of course, digital services with digital identities, which we can keep using if we evolve our own approach. And for example, in that sense, DuckDuckGoose comes up with technologies that are capable of detecting deepfakes in real time, as I said, without causing any friction. And that means that as soon as there's a new threat, we also need to, of course, change our approach to make sure that we can still make use of the things that are beneficial for us. The same goes for every type of other technology out there with emails, for example. Anyone can also, if they are capable enough and if they have the right methods, they can break into our emails and just read them. Also with paper letters, let's say someone else can open your letter to someone else and just start reading it. And that doesn't kind of need to stop us from using emails or letters that we send to others. It just means that we need to evolve our approach. We need to kind of come up with defenses that make it indeed possible to be able to stay using these type of also beneficial technologies for us, such as digital identities.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Priya. Blair, you wanna jump in on this? Are we approaching a digital trust apocalypse, a digital identity apocalypse?
If you were to ask me that question 3 months ago, I would say yes, we are approaching a digital trust apocalypse. But what I'd say today is it's already here. The tools that I saw 3 months ago, you used to be able to beat those things on video. You could have somebody hold their hand up to their face and these occlusions would appear. There were all kinds of artifacts that you used to be able to see. I tried 2 new tools last week and I found none of that. When I had somebody move their head at weird angles or hold their hand over their face, those artifacts were no longer there. They were completely clean and it looked perfect. So you can't trust Zoom calls anymore. I saw an article yesterday where 71% of applicants for a position turned out to be, turned out to be fake, actual fake people, and they weren't able to recognize this during the Zoom call. It took 3, 4, 5 different interviews before somebody was smart enough to recognize that something was a little bit funny. So yeah, I think we're gonna have to go back to in-person interviewing.
Okay, that's a little bit scary. Tobin, what do you think?
That's interesting
Is the
perspective.
apocalypse here?
Well, no, I don't think so. And I mean, Blair, so Priya, I totally agree with you. Like, things are evolving. Blair, I agree with you. There's some crazy things that we're starting to see, and within the last, I agree with that time frame. It's like week by week right now. But I don't think we're in a digital trust apocalypse. Like, how many millions of transactions probably took place today? How many millions of identity verifications from, I'm sure, your services, our services? Like, it's a lot of good things are still out there, and a lot of trustful things are happening. But I agree with Perea, like the threat is evolving and we have to continually evolve. And I think we're having to think faster than we ever have before. So I'll agree with you there, but I don't think we're in the middle of a digital trust apocalypse because I'm still transacting on my phone. I'm still authenticating on my phone. Like, we're okay from that perspective. The only other thing I'm going to say on this point is just, I think the question included like relying on just digital identity. I don't think we should ever rely on just digital identity. Some people who are members of society don't have a smartphone, right? Don't want to interact digitally. And there should always be options out there. And actually having those sort of non-digital fallback methods, the in-person interview, those are actually also great in the digital identity sphere because there's always a fallback where you can go in person as well in some instances. So we should never think of it as one thing or the other only. So yeah.
All right, Tobin, I'm going to come back to you with something Perea said because this was really, it stuck out to me. She's like, do we even own our face?
I know.
Like that concept, right? How does that relate to living in this world of digital transactions? Like, you know, if, as you're saying, right, there's millions of digital transactions are happening every day, but if our face is out there, like, how do we own that? What does that mean? Do we need to take new steps to own our face? I mean, how does that work?
I think what we need to think about is what's important within that ownership. And I think, I've been in this industry a long time, and so have you guys. Look, there was a time where we used to ask for an ID, and then we'd ask for a picture that matched. And we didn't think that people could just zoom in on the exact same face that was already on the ID. Like, it was very
Right.
basic, right? There was some bad mistakes made in the past. Now what we have to do when it comes to face ownership, it's not just how your face looks, because clearly Maria says people can get an image of your face, but it's also the inherent liveness detection. Keyless, we pair with a device so that the authentication can only happen with that device and that face at the same time. So it's like what your face looks like plus is the actual human behind the face there right now. So I think that's the change that's coming. Is it's not just about what my face looks like. As Steve has shown this week, he can do lots of things with our faces, right? So it's not things are happening to our faces without our knowledge. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for those of you that don't know what
Okay.
Tobin's talking about, if you haven't seen them, we've been sending out our promos in the form of post-apocalyptic movie posters. So we encourage everyone to go back and LinkedIn and take a look at those. We'll post those as well up on the Prism Project website and link it maybe to the live stream live streams on as we keep them on LinkedIn. I guess we have a place that we store them, Steve, or we'll store them on the Prism Project. Anyway, okay.
Absolutely.
All
Well, that
right.
was a great first round. I think we're getting a flow. So I think we're ready for our next question round. And Maxine, it is up if you want to take us away on this question.
Yeah, this is for Blair to start with. So solution provider narratives focus on this escalating use of deepfakes and fraud attacks. And you just talked about that, literally how in the last 3 months, the scale and scope has changed. So I guess maybe I know the answer already. Is this overhyped? Or do you have real world data that actually backs up these claims?
Yeah, we have real world data. We have our own, and we have other data. I think, Steve, you were at the Better Identity Coalition back in DC, earlier this year. There was a statement made there that deepfake attacks had increased over 4,000% year over year. Our own numbers are a little bit lower. We're right at about 1,700%, but I don't think it's overhyped. We are seeing a dramatic escalation in attacks and a dramatic escalation in the ingenuity with which the attacks are coming. It used to be, the old stuff, just deepfake, they were holding up to the camera and that kind of thing. But now they've figured out that Korea's technology and our technology and a lot of other technology, that's table stakes. We're able to detect any sort of video replay, picture replay of my face, all that kind of stuff. We've got stopped. What concerns me is injection attacks. And I think all of us have come a long way in preventing injection attacks from happening. I think there's still a little bit of work to do there. But when an injection attack happens, we don't get all the signals and all the data that we need to be able to detect that this is a deep fake attack. So that's really, it's not so much about being able to detect the artifacts and the fact that this isn't a real person naturally captured in the moment. That's the real frontier is injections and how to stop those completely. If you've got a solution like Keyless where they're pairing that with the device, you can control that capture and you can prevent injection attacks. But, a lot of customers, we deal a lot with the government, for example. And with the government, they want to have everybody have the option to be able to get through the process. So they actually allow uploads of identity documents. That's an attack vector that I would not recommend anybody pursue. No uploads of any images.
Okay, interesting. Priya, you want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, sure. So indeed, also from the DuckDuckGoose side, we have our own data. We see data coming up from the outside world as well. I would say in our case, when focusing, for example, on the use case for digital identities within the banking and the financial sector, we have even seen that data that comes in on a daily basis with selfies and document pictures of people who want to open a new bank account can be a deepfake for up to 10% even of that data coming in on a daily basis, as I said. And this is all to also due to the emergence of fraud as a service out there. You can make your deepfakes yourselves, but if you're just, want to also use the result of the deepfake technology, you can go out there and buy literally a lot of deepfakes, hundreds of them maybe, for a small amount of money. Go ahead and try your injection attacks, reply attacks that you want to perform, and see where you can, spoof the system. Also, as we have seen, so it's not only about the increase of the usage of deepfakes, but also about real life and actual financial impact. There was a research that I had seen lately on a website, I think it was called FinTech Boost Up. And there was a research that was basically focusing on UK, saying that institutions in the UK have seen actual financial loss. And some of them have even seen up to 10% of the revenue getting lost because of financial fraud actually happening. And also really agree with Blair on injection attacks. That's what actually also at DuckDuckGoose we see that a lot of companies, but also governments want to make it as easy as possible for the users to be able to upload their data or present their data. That's why you have this upload option or the web-based option that you can go to your browser if you don't have a smartphone, for example, and then give your data there to the government organ that you want to work together with. And that all makes it easier indeed to inject deepfakes, unless you have a specific tool in place that is, regardless the method of attack, looks at the image and the video itself to be able to analyze and find the fraudulent deepfakes in that case. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Priya. Tobin, went over a little bit, but I'm trying to be nice.
Okay. Yeah, really interesting thoughts. And I think the fact that injection attacks came up in both your answers is spot on. And I think you used the word frontier, Blair. I agree. Like there's a lot of hype because now we're seeing these kind of videos emerge, and oh look, you can create. I seem to see the same Polish passport like pop up all the time that keeps on getting. I have no idea why it happened to be a Polish passport, but it's definitely happening, and we can see the same kind of increases in percentage-wise intact happening that both the other respondents mentioned. I think like the key thing, like I say, is that frontier. It's when you see these videos, you've got to think, right, how are they actually going to make it into whatever the authentication system is or the verification system is? And that is maybe like we call it the battle line as well. Like, what are the defenses there to stop that happening? How do you stop it happening at scale as well? And there's so is it overhyped? I don't think it's overhyped because it's an increasing threat, but I still think because we've been dealing with injection attacks for a long time, I think our defenses are still pretty robust as an industry, but we're on high alert for sure.
Yeah. So I want to go through for each of you now, because I have a question that I'm really curious, and just a quick answer. You're all kind of quoting stats like, okay, is it 1,700 times or 4,000 times? I don't know. Both numbers seem really bad to me. However large that increase is. But do you feel like it would be valuable, because a lot of individual vendors are publishing these stats on their own? Would it be valuable to have some more sort of unified, standardized testing and analysis that where we could get some idea of where the data actually stands, and whether that means would individual vendors blindly contribute data, or would there be some other means to actually provide some unified statistics across the industry? Do you think, so very quickly, do you think if we could do something like that, it would be valuable? And would your organization be willing to contribute? Priya.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to have such a thing in place, because indeed vendors come up with a lot of data, which is also really good. But if you look at the end users, being banks, crypto platforms, or even gambling platforms, they don't know actually to what extent their own platforms are being attacked by deepfakes. A lot of them that at least we talk to have a knowledge gap in that sense. And I would say having something centralized with a lot of different parties, also governments, individuals, companies involved, would help a lot in making a better quantification of the problem itself. And then I think we are only able to come up with the better and the best solutions out there.
Blair?
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. It's a bit challenging. I think you'd almost have to do it by use case versus by company. So, for example, we work with government, and I just mentioned government allows uploads of identity documents. We're going to see more deep fakes in that channel. Financial institutions, the banks that we work with, they're willing to use our capture, where we can control injection attacks, we can control the deep fakes and apply, deep fake generators on the back end, or not generators, but detectors on the back end that examine every single image that comes in. So by use case or by vertical, I think we could come up with something like that. And I think it would be amazing. By company, it'd be tough for Authentic ID.
Right. Tobin?
Yeah, I think there's a good spirit of collaboration across. We're seeing it here in some vendors, but even when you've got people in the same segments, I think people are willing to share data. I totally agree with Blair. Like it's the devil's in the detail, and like
Right.
I'm sat on the European continent where we've got things like GDPR that sometimes get in the way of these things. But yeah, in principle, I think there is an openness and willingness to do that and to beat the fraudsters. That should be the aim of all of us. So yeah.
Yes.
Cool. I'm a big, obviously, believer in industry collaboration, right? That's why I'm here. Okay. The next question goes to Tobin, right? That's where we are. Yes.
Tobin's up next for the opening.
Tobin's up next. Wait, I need that question back, Steve. You took it down too quickly. Okay. Some experts claim we can't fight AI with AI. Do you agree or disagree? And what is your perspective on this escalating deepfakes arms race?
Okay, just give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna just type that question into AI and get a good response.
ChatGPT.
Exactly. It's just coming up now. Yeah, I mean, we can fight AI with AI. We already have been for a long time. I mean, AI is a hugely broad term. I think Priya and DuckDuckGoose are very specifically with kind of AI models to detect deepfakes. Like that's right in your wheelhouse. So like, yes, for sure, but you'll come on to that. But I think any vendor in this industry that's still surviving is collecting lots and lots of data and using machine learning and iterating and iterating and iterating again to make it better and better and better, and doing things like using AI for, as a kind of red team to test those defenses. Like for sure, computers and AI and machine learning are very useful in the fight against fraud. And now as AI generates these deep fakes, it's a powerful tool. But no one, I don't think, in their right mind in this industry is suggesting that's the only thing you should use to fight against AI and deepfakes. And we've already talked about things like how are you spotting for injections attacks. Root detection is something that we do as well, jailbroken devices. And also to make sure that, you're combining other types of data, perhaps behavioral biometrics, perhaps this, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on. I think the AI is a very useful tool to fight against AI. I mean, I struggle to see why. I don't see a good argument to say that you can't fight AI with AI, but it's one tool in the toolbox. That's where I'm at with this one.
Blair, what do you think?
We're not going to have as much controversy on this answer, Maxine. I don't know. I don't know who the experts were that said you can't fight AI with AI. Marketing people, they can't be real biometric experts because it's really the only way that we're going to be able to detect these anomalies. What concerns me a little bit is ongoing AI regulation. I'm hopeful that we don't get handcuffs put on all of us fraud fighters, and limit the way that we can use AI due to regulation, because we can count for sure that the fraudsters won't abide by the regulations. They won't abide by the rules, and they'll get further ahead of us. So I hope we can continue to use AI to fight these AI attacks. I'll give a bunch of time back.
Yeah.
All right. You can catch up next time, Priya.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with what is already being said here. I think we have no other choice. When it comes to deepfake generative AI, the human eye is just not able to catch those types of picture realistic results. And we should have AIs in place that are capable of helping us in that sense. There is indeed also things that we need to pay attention to, such as how does the AI system operate? Is it explainable enough for the human beings to understand what they're looking at and what kind of results they can expect? Is there any bias involved? So questions like that we also actively need to answer. And I would also say recently, with some interactions that we had with the financial institution, legislation can help a lot in the adoption of deepfake detection technologies in that sense, but also it can be something that can be blocking the way, basically. When it comes, for example, as Blair already mentioned, fraudsters, they don't comply with any legislation out there. They just go there, try out their methods, and they succeed in most cases as well if they want to. When it comes to having an AI system that is trained to catch deepfakes, there can be some challenges that are put on us because of legislation. And that can kind of indeed make your AI system progress more slowly. So there needs to be, I think, from my personal perspective, we need to find a balance between legislation, those type of AI challenges such as explainability, generalizability, and bias, and how we can use it effectively to commit basically prevent fraud from happening in that sense.
Well, that's great because it's actually, you guys are giving a little preview of the second Prism report of 2025, which is going to be on privacy and regulation. So stay tuned for that, folks. Blair, you know what? I want to ask you, just because I've known you for so long and I know you've been around this industry for so long, share a little enlightenment about how the biometrics industry has been using AI for some time, that it's not new to us. Because I think a lot of people act as if, oh, AI is new. We just started doing this. And yet in the biometrics industry, we've been training AI algorithms for a decade at least, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not the scientist that created those algorithms, Maxine, but as you said, you know, we've switched the old, I've been around the facial recognition matching business for 25 years, and the methods have absolutely changed. We're now using machine learning, computer vision, and AI to train our models to get better and better and better. Maria mentioned earlier that it's super important that we don't have bias in any of our AI. So that is what I'm seeing a big challenge is explaining how we use these tools and how, you know, the model governance, the model risk governance hurdles are getting much higher and much more difficult to pass through in a big financial institution. So, but yes, we have been using AI to train our face models for a long time, and we've seen the benefits of this, Maxine. I mean, it used to be that for, you know, various different skin tones or ages and genders, there was big error rates. Now the demographic differential on all the different algorithms, the top 20, is really minimal. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah, this is not new for those of us in biometrics who've been around for a while. Okay, great. All right, now we're on to the next question. And I think, am I back to Perea now, Steve?
We're actually going to change up the openers.
Oh, we're going to change up?
Yeah, we're going to go to Blair as the opener
Okay,
of this question.
Blair. See, Steve is keeping me on track, which is awesome. Okay, and this kind of relates to what we were just talking about. So data breaches combined with these large language models supercharge fraud. Do deepfake enabled synthetic identity attacks make traditional document and selfie verification unreliable? Ooh, this is kind of bringing us a little bit back to the DocV argument. So here we go, Blair.
Yeah, this is a touchy subject for me, you guys. Come on now. Why do I get this question? I think what it's done is made it mandatory now because you can no longer trust what you can see. So many companies are manually looking at identity documents, manually looking at faces, or doing video interviews. And I don't think those techniques work any longer. Has it made it easier for bad actors to scale? Maria mentioned fraud as a service. Yes, for a small amount of money, 10 cents a piece, you can create 1,000 different identity documents and massively attack. I think it's just going to be much more important. I know that AuthenticID and several of our competitors are equipped and able to stop those attacks, to detect those attacks. There's always tiny little errors that are made. And we can see those. It's just, is it unreliable? Yeah, it's unreliable now for a human to review these things. It's just made it mandatory to use a company like AuthenticID to examine documents and faces.
Tobin, what are your thoughts on the reliability of selfie-based verification? Because everybody now seems to be, people who think they don't understand anything about biometrics or don't know what that word means are doing selfie verification when they're logging in or, you know, setting up accounts with the government or financial service institutions. What do you think?
Yeah, I referenced it. I think supercharge is a great word actually to use in these questions because yeah, it's a multiplier. It means that attacks can happen at greater scale. What I think it's doing is it's kind of sorting the wheat from the chaff. So like if you had a very bad process in place, you're going to be targeted at scale now. So it's making the bad processes very, very bad and very, very weak. You know, I think I mentioned layers before. If fraudsters find a way between weak layers, they can then attack at scale and they can open up those gaps and go at them hard. And that's so you've got to be on your toes for that. But the strong authentication systems or verification systems are still very strong. And it doesn't really, you know, you can do something at scale. If you're not getting through, you're not getting through still. So I think, yeah, it's certainly sorting out, and I think some organizations out there are rightly worried. But you know, the good news is there's lots of vendors out there who are going to be able to help and are wary of the threat of deepfakes, wary of what that can bring, but are ready to fight that challenge because, as you guys said, it's been a challenge we've already been fighting for a long time. So we're pretty well prepped for it.
Maria, how is DuckDuckGoose helping companies deal with the supercharging of this selfie verification fraud that's happening?
That's actually in our core and in our DNA as well. So maybe one funny and also really eye-opening example that I can mention is that lately we're monitoring some data that is coming into our APIs for analysis, and of course on that we also do some monitoring to understand what kind of threats are coming in. And there was one specific user who had the picture of a passport. I think it was a Dutch passport as well. And exactly everything about the picture and the passport document was the same, except that in the consequent 20 plus applications or submissions of data for different account opening procedures, you could see the same passport picture, exactly the same setup and the context, but then every time a different person's face on the passport, which was face swaps, I think. And then every time you had also the same person as on the passport taking a selfie. So that was for us the ultimate example of synthetic identities being used. Here, the passport itself looked real, but then of course the picture of the person was changing the whole time. At DuckDuckGoose, we actually purely focus on this selfie part and the person's picture on the passport to be able to say if it's a deepfake or not. And in this case, they were all fully generated synthetic faces that they had made, and then with a couple of variations on the hair and the skin color, they tried to kind of create different people. And that's actually what we catch to make sure that there are no synthetic identities slipping through the system.
You know, this is so interesting, Priya, because one of the things that we're doing in the upcoming deepfake and synthetic identity report is creating this, what we call a cluster classification diagram, that basically looks at the different ways that deepfakes and real images and real data and synthetic identity data can actually be combined to commit different types of fraud, because there's a lot of complexity into how these different technologies can actually be combined together. So now I want to add another layer on top of that. I'm going to go back to you first, Priya, on this. We're hearing a lot now about human and non-human identities, and people are talking a lot now about how we're going to have all these agentic agents doing things for us on the internet, like paying our bills or filling applications out for us, or, you know, maybe following up with the passport office. So how are you thinking about that complexity that's going to be added to this soup of fraud that we have to deal with?
This is very interesting and also really sci-fi in that sense. So the posters that Steve has been making are really suitable for this context. It's also, I've recently seen a tool as well that kind of makes your Zoom avatar, and you can, in that sense, at the same time participate in multiple webinars like this, and you can also go ahead and talk as you normally do. But then you yourself, of course, don't need to be sitting in front of your webcam. So it was really interesting to see such things happening. Also, you need the agentic AI hype coming up. I would say not every deepfake or not every AI made content or action out there is malicious. That's also one of the aspects that we have been thinking about at DuckDuckGoose for a long time. Let's say, for example, that a tool gets integrated into a social media platform such as TikTok. On TikTok, you have a lot of AI made content, like the voice of a video or the filters that people put on their faces, which are usually not with bad intentions and not damageful either. And the question in that sense will be, do we then need to analyze and detect every deepfake out there, regardless the context of it? Because then you'll have this problem of huge data streams and volumes coming through you or to you in that sense. So I would say it's really important to take the context of something that you would like to detect into account as well. But that's, again, a challenge on itself, because how would you then gather data to train your systems to understand the context of a harmful or normal innocent deepfake or AI agent, let's say.
Interesting. Blair, Tobin, either one of you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think what you said, Priya, like the context is everything here, right? Like what your level of, like, do you need a high level of assurance? How much is the deep fake a threat to you? And then create your processes from there. Like Maxine, you talk really well about this, like matching like the right process and vendor for your particular need and industry and use case and what you're asking the user to do. That's the key to this. It's not the kind of apocalypse, like I said, but you've got to figure out what your process is, what the threats are, and then react accordingly to that. That's the advice I give here.
I would imagine you're going to be able to authenticate using cryptography that this agent actually has been given the rights by Steve to pull off this, book all my reservations for this Valentine's Day next year. I want you to book my hotel, book my food reservations, and do all that. It's going to become interesting. So how do we authenticate what that agent is able to do on your behalf? How is that going to be proven? I think we can prove that the agent is real and not a deepfake using cryptography, but how do we prove what their entitlements are, what they're authorized to do? That's going to be interesting in how all that evolves. Right now, I will say that this is all fairly new, using agents, and kind of like when new IDs get issued from a state. We don't start to see fakes of that newly issued identity document for several months after they come out. So I'm not that concerned about it today, but it is a problem that we need to get our arms around and start thinking about how we solve it tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation, as you said, Blair. We'll see. Like, we don't know yet what the attacks are going to look like or what the maliciousness is going to look like. And I think Paria's point too, that how do you start rethinking about deep fakes or synthetic identity in terms of, oh, these are useful, confirmed, valid actions that are being taken and have been approved by the person ultimately who has the ownership for those actions. So I think it's going to be just more fun and more job security for all of us in the identity space. Okay, this one is for Tobin now, and I think that this to me is this is something that's near and dear to my heart because I've been talking about this for eons. Buyers and buyers' governments, institutions are concerned about how we store documents, biometrics, and personal information, PII. How does your company address these kind of concerns with this data storage while combating all these different types of attacks?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Very dear to our heart at Keyless as well. We're 100% privacy preserving. What does that mean? It means we don't store any biometric data anywhere, and that biometric data can never be accessed by Keyless or even the buyers who purchase our products. There's like quite a long, boring, techie answer to like how we go about that, and I don't think now's like the place to get into it. But obviously, reach out if you do want to get into like how we go about that. But why is it important? Well, because like you say, buyers think it's important, but as a citizen, I also like really value that my biometric templates aren't kind of floating around everywhere. Look, it's as far as we're concerned, it's a solved problem, and you shouldn't need to do this anymore. The last thing I'll say on it as well, though, to try and sort of make it relevant to everyone here, is when it comes to authentication, the method we do, the kind of privacy by design, where We combine like face and device so that it can only be that person on that device that produces something that guarantees that it's that person on that device. And we call it zero knowledge biometrics, but we don't ever actually see the biometric template. What's great is that by making it 100% privacy preserving, we've also, in that act, made it super easy for the user as well. So I really love solutions. Keyless is one of them, where it's like privacy preserving, but it also makes it better for the user as well. Like our founder and CTO has a great line where when things are hard to use, they become less secure. And like passwords is the ultimate example of this, right? It's like a pain for people to think up new complicated passwords every time. So they start reusing the same one, which increases the threat as well. So yeah, I think if you can strike that balance between privacy and usability, you're onto a winner. And yeah, it's resonating with the market as well.
Well, it's interesting too, Tobin, because as you're talking about, yeah, when the passwords get more complicated, you write them down on a sticky note and stick them on your computer,
Exactly.
right? And I will say this because we have a lot of people I think who are going to be watching this live stream, who either in real time or on replay that may not be terribly have a terribly deep understanding of the technology or biometrics. And what I want to say about what Keyless is doing just in general is their approach is sort of a real-time, on-demand generation of what I call, a biometrically derived key. And
Yeah.
so basically when Tobin's talking about that, it's like that's why they're not storing it, because they're doing it in real time when you want to transact, and then you don't have to keep that data anywhere. So just to give people a little
Yeah, no, I think that's
more context for what you're doing, because I think it's important. Okay, Paria, talk to us about your perspective on data management and how that impacts DuckDuckGoose's choices in terms of how you're deploying technology.
Sure. So of course, data owners and customers have understandable concerns regarding, of course, their data and their privacy. At DuckDuckGoose, we never store data unnecessarily in that sense. We actually, as Indeed also stated, there is real-time analysis going on, and then also immediately after data is gone within our systems. So that's basically designed also to have data minimization principles at place. We only analyze selfies in this case, for example, also passport pictures with the person's face on it. And aside from that, nothing else, to make sure that there is not unnecessary data coming in that can also cause bigger dangers once there is a data breach, for example. We also, of course, have strong encryption and security measures in place, and privacy by design has already been one of our core beliefs and also core tasks from the start, since we are working with biometric data. We also never, as I said, train on customers' data. So some AI vendors and algorithms need real-time data that comes from the customer in order to be able to adopt and learn from it. In our case, we never do that, because that's, first of all, dangerous. Second of all, it's also not so privacy friendly in that sense. We make our own data to basically train our systems, our algorithms on it. And yeah, as I said, it's indeed being compliant to the government frameworks that we have here in Europe as well, such as GDPR and the others, to make sure that we operate privacy friendly.
So Blair, I'm going to change it up a little bit for you, because I know you, I know AuthenticID, and I know that AuthenticID for kind of really burnished its reputation in some ways by being able to catch serial fraudsters. And so I know you guys take a little bit of a different approach in terms of how you are using and managing biometric data, even though obviously you're bringing a lot of privacy and security principles to that process. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you think about data and how you feel like it needs to be used in order to really be able to combat the fraud that we're seeing, which is obviously accelerating and is often done, with these high velocity kind of attacks?
Yeah, I'd love to. There is going to be some controversy in my answer this time. So unlike either of the other panelists, we definitely store data. We store very sensitive data. In some cases, we've had some of the telcos data for as long as 4 years. And what that opens up is something pretty remarkable from an ROI standpoint and from a customer experience standpoint. I'll just give you a couple of examples. So one of our customers is very proactive about putting people in their bad actor list. If you've come in and frauded them, they've decided they never want to do business with that customer again. Well, how do you prevent that? The only way to prevent that, because you can say you are whatever you want to be with all the data breaches that have happened out there and get right through a system. So they're throwing both the biographic data from the identity document and the biometric data, their face, into this bad actor list. Every time that we scan an ID, we're scraping the data from the document, scraping the headshot from the document, and we query what we call Fraud Shield to see if we've seen that person before. And we have seen the same face on as many as 300 different IDs over a very short period of time. So it's proven quite effective. This customer today has over 72,000 bad actors that they put into this fraud shield. And last year, they got attacked by those same repeat fraudsters 69,000 times. We know exactly what the fraud loss per incident is. So the bottom line is that product alone saved this telco $73 million, north of $73 million just with that one solution. And what it also does from a user experience standpoint is create something pretty magical. It's called the bottom of the lake problem. Let's say you're out on a canoe and you've got your wallet with you, you've got your phone with you, the canoe tips. Your wallet and your phone are at the bottom of the lake. What do you do? I need a phone. I need a phone now. I can't go 3 hours without a phone, let alone go to a DMV and wait 3 weeks to get a new identity document issued. With this telco today, because we're storing this data, you're able to walk in and say, hey, I'm Maxine. Here's my phone number. Take a picture of me. They'll confirm that you're Maxine and hand you a phone immediately. It's magic. So there are pros.
Okay, great. So now we're coming up with our last question, and this is intended to be a bit of a kind of summary question for each of you. We'll start with Priya. What advice do you have for public and private sector leaders that are looking for cybersecurity, looking at cybersecurity and fraud risk in their organizations? How should they be addressing this problem going forward?
So we started DuckDuckGoose approximately 5 years ago, and back then we were one of the first companies and groups out there who came and said, hey, everyone, please be careful of deepfakes and generative AI because it's coming for us. And back then, if I would go back in time, we had to explain to literally everyone why they should be afraid and what the concerns are that we are seeing with this type of new technology coming up. Right now, there is a lot more awareness, which is a really good thing. And also, I would say, to summarize, it's really important for cybersecurity in general, but also for deepfakes and deepfake attacks, that we together monitor what's happening and just analyze and make observations of the behavior of, for example, fraudsters in that sense, on how they are leveraging this new technology to commit fraud and also commit other malicious activities with it. And that is right now, as we also briefly touched upon at the start, is really missing. As Blair said, per industry, per vertical, and per sector that if you look at, there are numbers from the vendor side, but if you look at the industries themselves, there's still a lot unknown in our experience. And once you don't know what kind of problem you're dealing with, it's already really difficult to come up with a solution for it. So my message in this sense would be, it's better if legislation, also governments, so public and private sector together, work on frameworks, standards, but also in a fast way, because sometimes those things can also take a long time. Well, as we said, fraudsters are not waiting for anything or anyone. So in a fast, but also really clever way to come up with frameworks and standards that make us, first of all, able to identify what the problem actually is with the actual scope of it, and then work together by multi-layering solutions to basically be able to defend ourselves against this type of new crime emerging.
Tobin, what are your thoughts? What do organizations need to be thinking about? How do they need to be addressing the situation now?
Yeah, I think and slightly pick up again on what Blair was saying earlier. Like, it's all about in GDPR we have this these terms around like appropriate and justifiable, right? Like, what's the appropriate amount of data to be sharing, to be using, to be viewing, for that use case. And there are use cases where I think they can be 100% privacy preserving. There are use cases, and I've been on the other side of the buyer side there, Blair, and I've seen examples like you're talking about where being able to share bad actor lists can be very valuable. So like make sure you've really questioned and hammered out what is justifiable and appropriate in terms of privacy preserving. Outside of that, like if we're just talking about what approaches should be taking to win the fight against bad actors, like make sure it's super usable for users, because like I said before, when it's hard for users, that makes it more inherently insecure. So like really focus on that usability and inclusivity as well, because I think that comes with lots of benefits as well. And make sure it's secure by design as well. I've talked about some of the ways that Keyless do that, but again, where we make it really easy for customers also makes it super secure, and how we combine face and device in our case, but how other vendors do it as well. I think it's really just be really conscious of privacy, usability, and security in the processes that you have when it comes to biometrics, and that should lead you and land you in a pretty good place in the fight against deepfakes that we've been talking about today.
Larry, you want to wrap us up?
It's a layered approach. I mean, the attacks are coming from every single channel out there. Starting with passwordless would be a really good start. The way the Keyless has implemented their passwordless, I love. I mean, there are no secrets to steal there. That's a good start. I'm very concerned about the voice channel today. I've seen dramatic improvements in the tools. It used to be that it took 30 minutes of listening to my voice to reliably replicate it. Now it takes 3 seconds. And humans are the line of defense in most cases. And I think humans are really poorly equipped to identify a deepfake image or a deepfake voice. So rush as quick as you can to implement tools like all of us offer here and others in the industry do that can detect these deepfake generated images and voices. Your people can no longer do it. You have to embrace tools today.
Final follow-up, Maxine, before we close out, or do you want to close out the session today?
I just want to say, as I'm listening to these folks talk, and obviously there's a lot of agreement here today, but are some points of difference. And I think what's so important is that when you're thinking about trying to deploy this kind of technology, that you really understand the problems you're trying to solve. And that one of the things that I think is so useful, going back to the Prism again, is to have the sense of, there's not one solution. There's not one vendor. There's not one single stop. When we're thinking about how we're going to be able to address cybersecurity and fraud going forward, we have to think about, again, defining our problem and then understanding how different solutions address those problems, and how do you build something that's going to work for your organization, whether it's the identification and authentication of customers, whether it's internal security with your own staff, whether it's hiring, which came up today, or whether it's dealing with partners and other business entities. You have to really be thinking about what are the problems you're trying to solve, and how can different technologies across this ecosystem help you build a solution that's going to actually be really useful for your organization. And in most cases, that means starting with maybe one set of problems and trying to get this technology to work effectively and really begin to develop some internal expertise, and then think more broadly about how you can take advantage of all these different capabilities so that you can secure your organization at every potential against every potential threat vector that's coming your way.
It's a great way to close out. We're right at time. Pariya, Blair, Tobin, thank you so much for participating in this event. I learned a ton from you. So thanks, and we're going to sign off for the day. See you.